What is it with games trying so hard to be movies nowadays? Big budget trailers that make the game look like a movie as they show no gameplay, expensive looking commercials with over the top special effects and real actors like the ones they did for Destiny. Then you have Ubisoft saying that a game feels more cinematic at 30 frames per second and that's why they want to aim for it, and saying that the human eye can't see the difference and crap like that. So where did this massive shift from games being games to games trying to be movies come from? Well, I think it started with the 7th generation. Well, that's more of a fact than anything else, as that's when we started to see things with really high polygon counts, high resolution textures, and very far draw distances. The 7th gen was a huge leap in the power of hardware. I heard that when the 360 came out in 2005, that it was so powerful that you couldn't buy a graphics processor that could compare with it. I'm not sure how true that is though, so take it anywhere from a grain of salt to those blocks they give cows to lick. During the 7th gen, which was the longest lasting one, having a run of close to 10 years, we saw more and more reviews where they were comparing the game to a movie, either it be the story or the visuals. Even the back of Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction has a quote from the New York Times saying that it delivers the long sought you are playing a Pixar movie experience. And yeah, it does. It's really amazing looking. Similar things are being said about the new game that reboots the series. Even the Overwatch character trailers are getting the same compliments. But that's what they are. Compliments. You don't sell the game on how much of a movie it's like. You can't sell a game like that, and it shouldn't be done like that, but it is. And it seems to be getting worse as time goes on. They seem to be working harder and harder on how a game looks rather than it plays, like The Order 1886. Now, I haven't played the game yet, but I have seen a lot of gameplay of it, and it's one of the most graphically impressive games on consoles. The visuals are so detailed, like water running off of a street lamp or the fabric of a blimp deforming under a character's feet, with phenomenal sounding music, great voice acting, and sound effects. But the gameplay has been heavily criticized for being a boring cover-based shooter filled with QuickTime events, and lots of walking and looking around sections. You know what movies have over video games? They can cut out the pointless, boring crap. You know in Iron Man 3 where Tony Stark is unconscious in the Iron Man suit and Jarvis pilots it after the Mandarin blows up his house and it cuts to him in the middle of nowhere after he landed? How boring would the movie have been if there was 10 to 15 minutes of him flying through the sky? A game would probably have you controlling that aspect. Like last week in my review of Blood Rain, where I pointed out how the game repeats itself like having the same goals of getting explosives and blowing up a wall for 2 levels, which took about 15 or 30 minutes. A movie would have had multiple cuts to show the process of her sneaking around and had it done in under 10 minutes. There's reasons why we consume different kinds of entertainment. We read books because we want to know everything that's going on in the story. We want to know what the character is thinking, and we want to be able to imagine the world with our mind's eye. We watch movies because we want to see the action. We want to see the emotions and hear the characters come to life. We play video games so we can interact with the game world and see where we can go within it and get to be the hero of the story. But you can tell that the developers just want you to watch their games, not play them. Like the final boss for Rise of the Tomb Raider just being 2 QuickTime events and then you run up a flight of stairs to complete the game. Yeah, it looks cool, but there's no sense of accomplishment. I got more satisfaction by taking out troops of enemies through nothing but stealth takedowns from the game's various hiding spots, and arrow headshots because of the amount of skill it takes to do. They take control away from us, replacing awesome battles with QuickTime events so that it looks like an action movie sequence, instead of letting us control the character to play out the fight in a way that lets us think and strategize. People tend to call QTE sequences lazy on the developer's part, but as I started writing this, I realized that it's actually lazier to not program QTEs. Think about it. Instead of actually letting you bash an enemy over the head like you were doing throughout the whole game, they would rather you press a specific button sequence to make specific things happen. They throw in QTEs because they look more cinematic than actually fighting the enemy. Tell me which sounds better. Hitting buttons as 2 characters on screen fight like Rock'em Sock'em robots from an angle you control, or having the camera cut to different angles and be all dynamic as each hit is emphasized and shown in all its glory. Exactly. The latter sounds better because it's something from a movie. So while you brainlessly press buttons that pop up on screen to make the action happen, it looks better than full control as you fight the enemy. But that's the problem. It just looks better. It doesn't play better. QuickTime event sections take you out of the action because there's no thinking involved. You're no longer invested in the game. For the amount of hours you've been sinking into it, your brain is thinking, okay, I need to get from here to there. How do I do that? Well, there's this way and that way, but they're both blocked. There's got to be something. Up there. I'll climb up here, pull the lever, and now there's guys shooting at me. Where's some cover? Okay, gotta make sure they don't flank me. Gotta shoot them before they get in my face. Gotta move from this cover because it's destroyed, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to big cinematic fights and its QTEs, now your brain is just going X, square, circle, square, circle, X, triangle. They do all this to push you into thinking games are movies. If the developers want their games to be movies, then they should just go work on movies instead of games. I had a teacher in college who worked in games and said that if you want to work in movies, do games first. I think at some point the game industry forgot that it made games, going so far to think that they make interactive movies. They keep going for these cinematic looks. While they're nice to look at, they shouldn't be the main focus because we're more than likely not going to be able to take it all in. Your brain is performing problem-solving tasks. It can't take in everything that the developers want you to see, and then forcing you to slow down and take in those cinematic elements takes you out of the game. I think that the Metal Gear Solid series is the perfect blend of cinematic movie elements and video games, especially Metal Gear Solid 3 and 4. They were games that felt like movies, not movies where you interacted with them on the occasion. The one game that really captures that game that feels like a movie that I played recently was the new Ratchet and Clank game. Because there's nothing wrong with the game feeling like a movie, but it shouldn't be the opposite, where it's more of a movie that feels like a game. Because in that case, the elements that make it a game are reduced and then less fun, and sections are dragged out because they don't use the movie magic of jump cuts. We get it. You're making art, but you shouldn't be choosing form over function, because no one wants to sit through an 8-hour movie.